Yeah, I am just getting that started. Just getting that started. Hello, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started in maybe a minute here. Oh, Annabelle is in the room with us. Okay, hold on. I have to ask you to unmute Annabelle, and then I'm going to spotlight both of us. Okay.
Sounds good. Hi, everyone.
Oh, spotlight. Spotlight. Okay. Out of that. I assume we are going to have a bunch more people show up. Okay. What do we got going here? Oh, we have a fair amount of people in the room already. Okay, well, we have a small spiel to start anyways. So I think, Annabelle, if you're ready, I'll go ahead and go through that spiel.
Please, yes, go for it, Eric.
Okay. Welcome everybody. Um, Good evening, and thank you to everybody joining us on the call. So thank you, Annabelle, for taking the time to join us tonight and answer some of our questions here. So my name is Eric, and I'm going to be doing the interviewing for this forum tonight. And I'm a member of Indivisible Downtown Chicago, as hopefully many of you know, since you signed up for the event. Um, so the way tonight is going to work, I'm going to ask a set of three questions at the beginning that we are asking to all of the candidates participating in our forum series. And then I'm going to ask a few questions that we've written specifically for Annabelle. So after that, so that'll take us to about 30 to 40 minutes. And then after that, we would open it up to general audience questions, so questions of any kind. Um, the way the questions are going to work, so um, we are encouraging you have two options. So when we get to the general audience portion, which is about 30 to 40 minutes in, you can raise your hand and we can call on you, and we have to ask you to unmute to be able to ask the question, but you're welcome to do it that way. Ask a question to Annabelle directly. I assume most candidates, they like that a lot. But you're also welcome, if you don't feel comfortable with that, you are welcome to send us questions in the chat. So I have a co-host with me tonight. Their name is Katie. And if you would go ahead, if you have a question, you have to select a new chat. And so you find Katie. Katie has changed their title so that you can see the co-host and guest. But you would select Katie, and then you can send the question to Katie, and then Katie can send it on to me. So that way I'm not, that way I'm not attempting to work both chat and sort of listen and keep that moving that way. Um, let's see, other things to say. So as we go through the questions that we've prepared for Annabelle, if you have a specific follow-up question, you are welcome to submit that in the chat as well. Do know we may not actually get to that, but you are welcome to do that. And I think that's pretty much all we have to say for the spiel. Um, yeah, I guess we will get started. So just to introduce Annabelle really quickly, like a super brief introduction that won't cover everything, so that we can turn it over to Annabelle and she can introduce herself in a lot more depth. So Annabelle is an organizer for United We Dream, and she's a trained investigative journalist from Northwestern, and she is running for Congress in the Illinois 7th, as we know. And Annabelle, that was an incredibly short introduction, so I will turn it over to you. Would you like to, I assume you would like to add? Are you muted somehow? Oh, that's sad.
Okay,
Okay,
perfect. There we go.
there we
Yeah,
go. Yeah.
thank you so much. Thanks, Eric, for the intro. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for making the time in your evenings to get to learn a little bit more about me and ask some questions. I know that this is a very crowded field, so I'm hoping that I can answer as many questions as possible tonight. My name is Annabelle Mendoza. I'm a lifelong Chicagoan. I was born and raised here in the city, and I grew up on the Southwest side in a neighborhood called West Lawn in a proud Latino and immigrant family. I come from a working class background, and I saw the tale of two cities here in Chicago. I saw what it looked like to have the lack of investment in our communities and in our neighborhoods. And that shaped my entire upbringing, especially to see having two hardworking parents picking up extra shifts. My dad would pick up extra shifts whenever he could and still only be left at the end of the month with $9 that turned into $7 that turned into $5 and three little kids to feed. I don't have to look from the outside to understand the affordability crisis that so many hardworking people are going through, especially here in the 7th district. I've lived it. Like Eric mentioned, I did not go far for college. I went to Northwestern University where I earned both my bachelor's and my master's degrees from journalism, from Medill, studying social justice and investigative journalism. I thought for the longest time that being a reporter was what I wanted to be. And after I graduated, I did a little bit of freelancing. I looked at things like the COVID-19 outbreak in the Stateville, Illinois prison. I looked at the conditions that unaccompanied immigrant children face in federal detention facilities and reported on long-form investigative pieces uncovering these types of abuses inside facilities paid for by our taxpayer dollars. It was through that reporting experience that I realized I have very strong opinions about the things that I was looking into. I realized I couldn't be silent about what I was sharing and I couldn't pretend to be objective about it either. So I made a pivot completely out of traditional journalism and decided to use my skills in a different way. And that led me to the immigrant rights movement, where I've been ever since. I have helped to spearhead national coalitions of hundreds of organizations from all across the country that have actively and successfully blocked tens of billions of our taxpayer dollars from going to ICE and CBP. I've advocated for the rights of families who are facing family separation. I have been on the phones and at the tables with families who are thinking through what is our plan for who is going to have legal rights over our children if we are deported. I have been on the front lines with so many courageous organizers and activists across the country fighting against what we have seen on the streets of Chicago, with ICE, masked ICE and CBP agents executing immigrants and US citizens alike. And I can tell you from doing this work that this isn't just an immigrant issue. This affects all of us, especially when tens of billions of our taxpayer dollars are funneled into these agencies. We have not invested in a pathway to citizenship, and that is money that also will never make it into the needs of so many neighborhoods and communities across the 7th district who are demanding affordable housing, access to healthcare, food in food deserts, right? These are the issues that we need to have a member of Congress that is laser focused on tackling, and that is part of why I'm running in this moment. And I hope to expand on that a little bit more.
Yeah. Wow, that was a great answer. Thank you. I feel like you gave quite a bit. So I'm going to do my best to not retread the some of the same topics.
All good.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess our first pre-created question was what motivated you run and what sets
Yeah,
you apart from the other grassroots or progressive candidates. But I'd like to add just more specifically, so because you gave us a lot of the personal story that sort of led you up to thinking about running, but was there anything in particular last year or in 2024 that you can point to that really sort of sealed the deal? Were there a few different factors? I assume, right, obviously your work as an immigrant rights advocate, but like, I guess if we could get more specific, that'd be great. And then definitely the second part of that question. So, like, in your mind, what sets you most apart
sure.
from the other progressives and grassroots candidates. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will just say this. I made the decision to run for Congress because I believe that it's time for a completely new generation of leadership that isn't afraid to stand 10 toes down and actually fight for what our communities need and deserve over the greed, the corruption, and the outright evil that we are witnessing being committed at the highest levels. I have had a front row seat to that evil, having worked in the immigrant rights movement for as long as I have, and having worked with a very specific population of immigrant youth in particular. And so, right now, what we are seeing by this administration is a total escalation of attacks. This has existed before the Trump era. ICE and CBP have been committing horrors long before Trump arrived. But we are seeing a moment where we're reaching a fever pitch, where it is truly a five-alarm fire. And I think particularly in the past couple of years, what I will point to, Eric, in terms of specifics, it has been the unfolding genocide in Palestine. That is something that is being paid for by our taxpayer dollars, where we are seeing an outsized influence by dark money groups like AIPAC that are pulling the strings and influencing the decision making of our members of Congress. And if we can continue to bankroll genocide and war crimes with zero accountability, again, while everyday people here in the United States and here in the 7th District are being told to get by with less and less, but there is always enough money for war, there is always enough money to commit the worst atrocities I have ever witnessed live streamed to my phone. This is the type of leadership we need that is not going to be lukewarm about any of what's going on. Whether it's the fact that we're seeing the corruption by AIPAC and dark money and corporate PACs, whether it's the brutal militant crackdown by ICE and CBP on our streets, or the fact that members of Congress, including those within our own Democratic leadership, are more concerned with funding, again, endless wars, invasions that we continue to see pop up in the news, rather than making sure families have enough to put food on the table or have housing or have access to health care. This is completely unacceptable. And to your question about what sets me apart from some of the other candidates, I'll say that it's this conviction. The conviction that I have sets me apart from most of these candidates. And there are many candidates in this race who are strong, who I think are running strong races, but who also call themselves progressive. And let me be very clear that a true progressive is someone who is willing to challenge the status quo. It is someone who is not going to play nice with what we're up against. It's not someone who is going to water down their language to make it palatable and more appeasing for the people behind the scenes who are pulling the strings. I am not loyal to anybody except the constituents of this district. That is all who I will answer to. And it's why I've run a grassroots campaign with no special interest money, no dark money, no APAC money. And again, what sets me apart are these values. And additionally, as the youngest candidate in this race, the only Gen Z candidate running for the 7th district, I believe my values are really rooted in a generation that refuses to be constricted by the way things are in politics. We've been told time and time again, oh, this is just how politics operates. You need to get used to it. My generation doesn't want to get used to it. We reject that premise that we need to get used to it. And we are taking courageous and bold action to show others what is possible. And then the final thing I will say to this is that, as I said before, I am the only candidate in this race who is bringing the years of experience on the front lines of the immigrant rights movement at a time when we are seeing ICE and CBP unleash absolute terror, not just here in Chicago, but in cities like Minneapolis and in LA, all across this country. And that is extremely important to have that experience at a time like this.
That's awesome. Yeah. No, I think definitely for most people that have maybe caught some of what you've been saying out there at the forums or other places, I think certainly everybody appreciates how strong you say what you say, and you do say it with conviction. There is rarely a time where you are out there talking and you are not speaking with sort of the firm conviction and sort of a full chest and backbone that people appreciate. So,
Thanks, Eric. I
um,
appreciate you
yeah, of
saying that.
course. Yeah, yeah. Well, it's one of those things. Okay, so now to move on, completely pivot to maybe a more traditional forum question.
Sure.
So the second question we've been asking candidates, the 7th district contains some of the widest wealth and health disparities in the country, from the
Yes.
Gold Coast to West Garfield Park.
Yes.
So, how does your platform specifically bridge that gap? And what are a few day one federal priorities you
Yeah.
believe would have the most immediate impact for the 7th District specifically?
Thank you, Eric. I think this is perhaps the most important question we need to be asking as it pertains to the seventh district. There are extreme wealth and health disparities in the seventh district that have translated into the largest life expectancy gap in the country that exists just in this district alone, where you can live in a neighborhood like Englewood and live 30 years less than if you live in Streeterville. Both neighborhoods are in the same city, both are in the same district, just a couple of miles apart, and yet entirely different life expectancies. That is not only a shameful fact about Illinois 7th District, it's also entirely preventable when we have the right people in Congress who are going to legislate and understand that this closing the door and slamming the door shut on this life expectancy gap in our district is bigger than just passing Medicare for all. I absolutely support passing Medicare for all, and that will be something I will be proud to co-sponsor and push along if elected to Congress. But it's also about making sure that we have leaders who are going to tackle the social determinants of health and understand that these are intersectional issues. So some of the things that I would do on day one, some of my day one priorities to tackle this health disparity and the wealth disparity, first off, would be fighting to remove all lead pipes in our district that are quite literally poisoning individuals, families, and children through the water that they drink. I would also strengthen SNAP benefits. I'm sure that folks saw the new work requirements that were added to SNAP benefits that are jeopardizing 400,000 Chicagoans who will not have access to healthy and affordable food. And we've seen SNAP, this critical program, be subjected to political attacks by this administration. And so that is something that I would strengthen and protect is access to SNAP. There is no reason that in the richest country in the world, there are people who are struggling to have access to food, and food insecurity and the presence of food deserts across the 7th district, especially on the south and west sides, is an extremely important issue that I would be focused on tackling. And the third thing here, as it pertains to the wealth disparity, is we need to, at the federal level, we need to raise our federal minimum wage. It is absolutely shameful what our federal minimum wage is right now. It needs to be closer to $25 to $30 an hour, and that is something that I would fight for. Because when you are able to invest in making sure people have a livable wage, then they can make sure that they are taking care of their families, that they're able to afford food. And that's just one piece of the puzzle here. But that is one immediate thing that I think we need more leaders in Congress who are going to be focused on making sure that people can earn a livable wage at a time when prices keep rising and wages have not been able to stay at pace with those prices.
Yeah, definitely. So I think yeah, that's what there's always the split. There's like national issues that sort of apply almost everywhere. And then you did mention a very specific issue to the 7th, which there are other places across the nation, of course, that share the issue of lead pipes. But just as a follow-up, so taking
Yeah.
the issue of removing lead pipes, um, it's a big infrastructure project. Can
Yeah.
you tell us a little bit about how you would go about delivering on that particular priority, considering that it may be something that might be hard to get buy-in from people whose districts are elsewhere and they don't have that problem. It's sort of unlike the national issues where there is a lot of coalition or a lot of support around, raising the wage, fixing lead pipes may be a little harder to get support for. So if you wouldn't mind talking about how you would work to get something like that passed, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I think that here my priority going to Congress would be to make sure that I am elevating the life-threatening issues that are affecting the constituents in the seventh district. That isn't to say that I'm going to go to Congress and say, oh, we're going to forget about the lead pipes because not everybody in the country is struggling with that. My job is to make it urgent, is to go to Congress and to show and elevate the voices of those in the 7th district who are being poisoned by these lead pipes. And that is something that I would make a priority. It also means that we have to build the right coalitions and the leverage in Congress to actually get something like this across. There is already going to be folks who are focused on environmental justice, tackling the consequences of environmental racism, for instance. It would be my priority to make sure that I'm working with that coalition to make sure that the issue around lead pipes is something that is forefronted and is tackled. Additionally, we have also seen how the federal government, rather than work in partnership with our state and local officials, have actively worked to strong arm our state and local officials. That is not the role or should be the role of Congress and our federal government. I would work as a partner to our state and local electeds. I want to make sure that they also have the resources locally to be tackling the lead pipe issue because that is something that is affecting, as you mentioned, Eric, Chicagoans all across the city, especially if you are living in older apartment buildings, older homes that have not had the renovations that are needed. And that is something that is also a public health issue. Again, that is contributing to this growing life expectancy gap here. And so that's something that I would make myself a resource and an ally to our local elected officials rather than be a barrier to them. I'm going to help work and make sure that their priorities here locally are being translated through funding and through the proper legislation.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Okay, let's keep moving along. There's so much to ask. I wish I could ask follow-up questions, but we'd be here for, 2 hours. So, or well, 2.5. All right. So, our next question. So this would bring us to our last prepared question
Sure.
that we're asking all of the candidates. So just for everybody watching, right, keep that in mind. This is going to all of the candidates. So I think many of us, myself included, can attest to hearing a lot of people despair in the last few weeks over the multi-way ticket split we're probably going to get amongst the progressive and grassroots candidates. That should really be a progressive or grassroots candidates. Do you see this as a problem as well? And if not, would you mind explaining why not?
Sure. Yes, this is, I'm sure, a question that is on a lot of folks' minds, and I don't know how it couldn't be. It's such a crowded field. But I'll first say this. I am very glad that voters, especially the folks on this call who are joining tonight, I'm glad that you get to be selective about who is going to represent you in Congress. This is unlike any race that we've had before. This is the first open seat that we've had in nearly 30 years in this district in particular. Yes, it is a crowded field, and I know that it can feel very overwhelming when there are so many candidates on the ballot. But I have always said, and I will continue to say, that I do believe true democracy means that you, as voters, have a choice. You get to be selective, not about choosing between the lesser of two evils, but about who you really want to represent you, who you really think reflects your values and your vision for the future of not just this district, but the future of political leadership, the future of our country. And that makes me really proud to see so many people throwing their hats in the ring. That makes me proud that you all get to be selective. It might make your job a little bit harder to have to find who you're going to vote for. But again, I do think that true democracy is about having a diverse choice. Again, I also think that in this primary in particular and in crowded races all across Illinois, I'm sure folks have seen how crowded Illinois 9 is, for instance. I think the moments like this continue to prove why having ranked choice voting is so important. That's something I deeply support. And ultimately, that's the place I hope that we can get to in our elections because I do think that that gives you all as voters the most decision-making power possible. And that strengthens our democracy and it strengthens civic engagement. And it also strengthens people being able to make a run for office without, this constant, oh, well, there's too many of us. Does that help
Yeah,
answer, Eric?
Oh yeah, no, definitely. That's what
Okay.
I was just thinking. I had ranked choice worked into another question below, so we've ticked that one off. That's awesome. I think a lot of people that's something that they're very excited to hear. And I assume most of our progressive candidates support ranked choice, but
I
it's
hope
this
so.
election. Yeah, right. This election sort of proves why it would be nice to have that. Um,
Agreed. Yes.
yeah, so a follow-up, maybe because I don't want to run too long on the prepared questions, but maybe just like try to a 1 minute answer. Um, I know, we could talk about any of these issues for a long time, but so do you see any value in talented candidates with small grassroots support dropping out to rally behind other more established candidates? And not necessarily the non-progressive candidates, I just mean the more established progressive ones or whoever they might wish to support.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, I mean, of course, I do think that consolidation, especially behind candidates that have a data-backed pathway to victory, have proven that they can stay competitive in fundraising for this race, especially a federal level race like this, and aren't also taking special interest money, then yes, I think consolidating behind those types of leaders is a smart strategy. I'll also say though, I do believe that the push for consolidation needs to come from the constituents. It needs to come from those in the district who are directly in touch with the different campaigns and candidates and are making that call to action. Because again, as leaders, as those who are seeking to represent you, we need to be the ones listening to your calls. And I think that that's what's most important. Again, really wish that we had ranked choice voting. Ultimately, we have 15 days left in this primary, and I do believe that strategic conversations about consolidation should have happened much earlier in this race, probably in October. Unfortunately, I think that there were still candidates who were declaring at that time to run, and it was already a crowded field. And so I think that, this is all learnings we can have for future races where perhaps it gets really crowded. Again, what are the things that we want differently as part of our electoral system?
Yeah, I appreciate that answer. So, and then just one last quick follow-up on it. So if we did force you to support another candidate in this race, who, if we could do that, if we had that power, who would that be?
Oh my God, that's a good question. It's come up a couple of different times in other forums. First off, let me just say this. No forced voting should be allowed. That is voter intimidation, Eric. I know
That's
you
true.
know that.
Yeah,
No, I'm kidding.
yeah,
No, but look, I do deeply respect a lot of the candidates in this race. And as I've mentioned, I'm glad that you all as voters have get to be selective. I know Reed and what he is fighting for and the values that he is leading with, and I deeply respect how he has led his campaign and led his team with a lot of humility and a lot of integrity. And so he would be someone I would be proud to support.
awesome. Thank you. Thank you. I think everybody appreciates the honesty from candidates. Okay,
Sure.
so then this question I have for you has a little bit of build up. I'll try to get through it. So,
Okay.
many historians and sociologists argue that America operates under a race-based caste system
Yes.
designed to pit working class people against one another for the benefit of an elite few. If elected, how will you build multiracial solidarity among the 7th District's working class? Specifically, do you believe that delivering universal material gains, like healthcare and housing, is the most effective way to dismantle the us versus them rhetoric and setup that is fueling the regime's current mass deportations and hate-based policies?
Very excellent question. So I absolutely agree with the caste system that is the structure of our country. I have been building a multiracial coalition through the work that I do. I have experience doing this every single day on the front lines of the immigrant rights movement because immigration, as I've said, is not just, although many people might think because of popular narratives that are told to us by the media that immigration is mostly an issue affecting Latinos, it also affects Black migrants. We have seen this administration target TPS for Countries like Haiti, for instance, predominantly Black countries. We have seen this administration issue a Muslim ban, for instance, right? So this is a multiracial issue, and we have been, me alongside the immigrant youth that I have organized with, have been building multiracial coalitions to lead the immigrant rights movement because this is a multiracial issue. One of the things I call attention to quite a bit in my campaign is as it pertains to fighting for a pathway to citizenship at the federal level. Because I think a pathway to citizenship not only is the morally right thing to do, but it is also about building worker-led power in this country. And when you can keep an entire population of 11 million people in this country undocumented, that is not by accident. That is by design. That is because now you can keep an entire population under your thumb, continue to threaten them with deportation and detention and family separation, and pay them wages that are completely inhumane, that do not sustain anybody. You can pay them dirt cheap and say, well, if you don't do this work for barely $5 an hour, then we will report you to ICE and CBP. Will threaten to separate you from your family. A pathway to citizenship actually strengthens labor rights because when we can remove that threat of deportation and detention and family separation, then you have more workers joining the ranks to fight alongside those who are in manufacturing companies all across this country facing exploitation from their CEOs who are saying, no, we're not going to give you a livable wage. No, we're not going to give you better working conditions. Because if you organize for this, we're just going to hire someone who's undocumented instead. When we remove that threat, we actually can build working class solidarity and realize it has always been us against the top 1 to 10% that is hoarding wealth in this country and squeezing every single one of us day by day until there's nothing left.
Yeah, that's a really interesting answer. So specifically what I had in mind, which you had sort of alluded to before, was I think the Democratic Party, there's a lot of energy right now, even amongst the more moderate and centrist Democrats, for something approaching Medicare for all, a single payer system. So
Sure.
I think specifically what a lot of people have in mind is something like that. But so I guess, I guess affordable housing and healthcare. I think a lot of people view that as it's one of the ways that sort of a lack of affordable housing and lack of access to healthcare is one of the ways that people get divided. But so I think the answer you just gave is really enlightening to me.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, I know about that, but hadn't thought about that should really come first. So
Well, if I
go ahead.
could
Yeah.
expand, Eric, just briefly, if folks
Yeah.
remember in 2023, I believe it was, not too long ago, Governor Abbott in Texas trafficked migrants to the city of Chicago. Some some migrants were dropped off in the nearby western suburbs like Oak Park, but most were left to kind of figure things out on the south side, deliberately in predominantly Black neighborhoods. And I have always said this, that Governor Abbott, he got what he wanted out of that scheme, which was to pit communities, working class communities against one another, to feed us a lie of scarcity, and to make us believe that it's actually our neighbors taking from us as opposed to the top 1 to 10% in this country. And what we saw unfold in Chicago was that communities on the South Side who have been pushing so hard to make sure that their public schools were open in their neighborhoods and well resourced for their kids, we're now seeing those schools open for to house migrants. First off, let me say schools are not housing. That is not housing for anybody. Secondly, the rightful frustration that communities felt to see their schools that they wanted open for their kids now opened for a completely different purpose that was also deeply inhumane. That is also fair, and we need to acknowledge that truth. But we also need to make it very clear about what this strategy was aimed to do. It was aimed to pit us against one another. It was aimed to make us look at another community and say, it's your fault. And I think that when we are able to kind of pull the curtain back on the strategy of division, that is how we are able to understand that whether you live in Englewood, you live in back of the yards, you live in Chinatown, you live in Oak Park, all of our issues are intersecting when it comes to where our Congress appropriates our resources. So if we care about affordable housing, if we care about investment in public education, if we care about getting ICE out of our communities, the through line through all of that is that we are spending billions upon billions of your taxpayer dollars on the wrong things. And they're not coming into our neighborhoods. They're not coming into the things that we deeply care for our families and for the generations that come after us.
That's great. I feel it's okay. Can you give us an example of the kinds of things that we're spending taxpayer money on that
Yeah.
is instead of
Oh, yeah.
delivering, resources and benefits for people, let's say in the seventh?
Happy to.
Yeah.
Sure, folks might have seen 40 million of our taxpayer dollars is going to ICE so that they can open up warehouses to cage families and individuals. I'm pretty sure the American people strongly support having that money come into our public education system, coming into ensuring health care and food access. As I mentioned, that life expectancy gap that we were talking about at the top of this call needs to be what leaders are focused on when they get to Congress on tackling. But we are hemorrhaging our resources on the things that are actually terrorizing our communities. And the 40 million to ICE for the warehouses is just the tip of the iceberg. In the last appropriations bill, we gave 170 billion to ICE and CBP. When yet we have seen that detention centers in 2025 was historically one of the most highest rates of deaths in detention facilities, and yet we're giving them a raise? We're giving these agencies a raise for that? So that's part of it. We're also seeing that our government's defense budget is also just through the roof. So we could talk about that all day, about how much money gets poured into, again, endless wars, into bombing other countries that kill innocent civilians rather than investing in diplomacy and peace and making sure that, again, we're tackling the major issues and concerns of people who are living in the 7th District.
Great, thank you. Um, okay, so moving on. So many candidates talk about wanting to work on legislation and budget priorities that create jobs and opportunities to invest in people. So for example, one of your fellow candidates, who I just opened my mailbox and recycled about 6 to 7 of his mailers, Jason Friedman, says he wants to create jobs that give people the opportunity to live the American dream, just like his family has. And so my fear is that, for those of you that don't know, Mr. Friedman is an extensive property owner in the River North area. He
Mhm.
actually owns my work building, the building my company operates out of. So my fear is that what he means really by that, or really what he could, like when he conceives of a job, like the thing that's most likely to happen in his mind is the sorts of jobs in restaurants and hotels that sometimes don't come with the best wages. They don't come with the strongest union protections, that don't offer much security in terms of, or a future for people to see when they're working those jobs. So
Yes.
I guess what my question to you after all of that is, like, when you think of jobs in the seventh district, what sorts of jobs do you have in mind for people?
Yeah, such a good question. First off, I think that you're absolutely right. We need to have not only jobs that pay a livable wage, but strong union jobs where people can actually collectively bargain for what they deserve. And that means that at the federal level, that looks like having a member of Congress who would fight for the PRO Act, which is something I strongly support. And again, that is to make unionizing something that is easier for workers so that they can collectively bargain and also not face retaliation as a result of unionizing wherever work may be. I think when we think about, for instance, the intersection of these different issues, one of the things I talked about at the top of this call was removal of lead pipes. That's going to take labor to remove those lead pipes. If we want to invest in environmental justice in this district, again, that's going to take labor. And it's very important that those jobs are made available locally, that economic opportunity is made available for the individuals who call the 7th district home, that they have the opportunity to actually work in those jobs, earn a livable wage, be protected by unions, and bargain for higher wages and more benefits that actually allow them to get to a place where they can thrive as workers in this country, not just in a place of constant survival, which is far too often what so many workers across the country are faced with. And I think that that is something that, again, is a priority for me in if I were elected to this position, is making sure that whatever jobs are opened up as a result of what we're funding in this district are made available first to those who live in the district.
Yeah, I love that. Local hiring.
Yes.
Um, Okay, so I won't ask the follow-ups. I have them there, but that's we got to move on. So abolishing ICE is often framed by critics as opening the borders, but many advocates see it as an opportunity for deep reform of the immigration system as a whole, from the bottom on up. So everything, right? Beyond just removing the agency, what legislative reforms do you think need to happen simultaneously with abolishing ICE?
Yeah, of course. I've always said that we need to go more than just talking about abolishing ICE or fighting to abolish ICE. First off, we have more Border Patrol agents on our streets than we do ICE agents. ICE and CBP are two sides of the same coin. All of DHS needs to be dismantled. That includes making sure that we impeach Secretary Noem for the actions that have happened at her under her supervision. That also means prosecuting the agents who we have seen violate due process and the Constitution and execute people in the streets. But in addition, the legislation that needs to move simultaneously to all of this is making sure that we pass pathways to citizenship. Again, like I said before, keeping 11 million people undocumented in this country is it is a political move to keep an entire population vulnerable and able to be exploited. And it is also about how we strengthen worker rights in this country. And so I would strongly support a pathway to citizenship. I'll also add that universal access to legal representation must be included in any legislation that we move forward on the immigration front. I have worked with so many individuals, including children, who are forced to represent themselves alone in front of a trained government prosecutor, in front of a judge, and have to navigate the legalese of our immigrant justice system without any legal support whatsoever. We know the difference between having access to a lawyer is the difference between whether you will be deported to a country you have never been to since you were a child, that you may not even speak the language of, or whether or not you will be able to stay united with your family. And so it is something that needs to be front and center of any type of immigration legislation that we talk about is guaranteed access to legal representation.
Yeah, that's horrifying to think about a child having to defend
I
themselves.
mean, there have been children
Yeah.
as young as 3, 4 years old
Oh God.
who are, again, in front of a judge having to defend why they should stay in the country.
That is
That's
that's
a
pretty
failure of our system.
yeah, that is disgusting. Okay, so as a follow-up to sort of leap off into just the accountability question. So what sort of accountability measures do we need to take for folks working at the DHS and other places in the administration to make sure nothing like this can ever happen again?
Well, again, like I said before, we need to first, we cannot allow what we have seen, what we have witnessed unfold, especially in cities like Minneapolis, right? We saw the execution of Renee Nicole Good and Alex Preddy, but those weren't the only deaths that we have seen at the hands of ICE and CBP. There was Keith Porter, right, in LA. There was Silverio Villegas Gonzalez in Franklin Park here in Illinois. And on top of that, as I've mentioned before, there have been upwards of 30 deaths in detention facilities, detention facilities in 2025 alone, a historic high in almost 2 decades. So this is when we talk about accountability, it needs to happen right now. It needs to, how are we allowing these agents to continue to, again, get a raise as opposed to actually being prosecuted and held accountable for their actions. That also means that there have been many US citizens, including those in this district who I have had the honor of speaking to, who have told me that when they're out there protesting at, for instance, the Broadview facility, they have been targeted. They have faced federal indictment as a result. They are being the federal government is trying to make an example out of them that if you exercise your First Amendment right, if you peacefully protest, we will make an example out of you and we will quell your ability to speak out against injustice. What we need to do and what I would fight for at the congressional level is to make sure that my constituents have every resource possible to seek restitution for the violations on their due process and on their constitutional rights. And many people face barriers, legal barriers to actually being able to exercise and get justice for what they were put through at the hands of our own government. And we need to remove those barriers. We need someone in office who is going to actively work hand in hand with their constituents to make sure that they can take legal action and get the restitution that they deserve. Again, for the injustice that they have had to endure.
That's great. So yeah, you see part of that as being involved or being connected to constituent services. So
Absolutely. Yes.
nice. Let's see. Okay, so I think we should. I have a couple other questions written here, but we'll wait on that. And I think at this point, we can open it up to audience questions. Um, I probably should have given like a 10-minute warning, so we'll see if any come in really quickly.
Sure.
Otherwise, I can just ask another question. But yeah, if you have a question, if you want to raise your hand, and we can then call on you, I'll unmute you. You can ask your question. Otherwise, you can send your question to my co-host Katie in the chat. So if you go to the chat, you can't message everyone in the chat, but what you can do is click the new chat, select Katie, and then send your question to Katie, and Katie will get that question to me. So there might be some people typing and whatnot since I forgot to give, I forgot to give like a
No
10-minute
worries.
warning. So I guess, okay, so as a follow-up, let's see, a couple, let's see.
Eric, we do have one that I just sent you,
Oh,
and
okay, perfect.
hopefully
Yep.
some more will come through in a moment.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Let's do that as opposed to me, because some of the questions I have here they're best with some time. Okay, so we got a chat question first, and then I see a hand. So I'm just gonna go to this chat question first because that's
Okay,
the first one we got.
sure.
But I will call on you soon. Hold on. So the first question here is, what caucus or caucuses do you look to join when you become a member of Congress, and why?
Oh, this is a great question. I think I would want to join the Congressional Hispanic Caucus as a Latina. I would also want to join the Congressional Progressive Caucus to continue to build relationships with progressive members of Congress. I will say that we have seen reports and news about many members who are part of the Congressional Progressive Caucus who have taken special interest money, APAC money, dark money interest. I think that has been something that I have seen quite a lot of in the past several weeks coming to the forefront. And I think that it is important that I'm part of those caucuses to be able to push the type of leadership that we need. As I mentioned before, what is true progressive leadership in this moment when we are facing existential crises on all fronts? That means challenging the status quo. That means holding even those within your own party, even those within your own caucus to account, holding their feet to the fire and having to answer the very difficult questions about where their priorities actually lie.
Nice, nice. Okay, so then I'm going to go to the hand that is raised. That is Daniel. I'm going to lower your hand, and then I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Hi, Eric, thanks for moderating. Annabelle, thanks for taking time out. As an undecided 7th district voter, one thing for me is what you've talked about earlier, which is getting the money out of politics.
Mhm.
It's really disheartening that less than half the candidates even have a stance on it.
Yeah.
But can you just sort of walk us through if you are able to sort of execute your vision of getting money out of politics, what do elections look like then? Do we have election holidays? You talked about ranked choice voting. Can you just sort of maybe give
Yeah.
more the nuts and bolts of it?
Well, look, I think it would be great to get to a place one day where our elections are publicly funded. I'll say that being someone who's running for Congress, it is insane how much money you need to be able to run at the federal level. That is an inhibitor for so many people to actually be civically engaged that I think is a barrier that deserves to be removed. Again, money should not buy your way into elected office because a massive super PAC with its own interests to fund weapons manufacturers because they get richer as a result of that, or a super PAC that is more invested in big oil as opposed to green energy and protecting our environment. That is the kind of interests that are pulling the strings and making the decisions behind the scenes for so many of our elected officials. And it, again, as I said, buys many people's way into office. So ranked choice voting, publicly funded elections, that's something I think we should be pushing to get to, absolutely getting special interests out of our politics. And what I'll also say to this front about elections is I think we need to also engage more young people in our elections. We need to ensure that young people not only see themselves as civically engaged, but actually see themselves in leadership positions and have the resources and support to actually run for office, especially locally or at the state level or even at the federal level. That is something that should be supported of our young leaders all across the country. That I think is something that is deeply disinvested in and sometimes discouraged in many ways. And so I think that that is a priority that I would be focused on. And then I think there was one other thing I was going to mention to your point, Daniel, about elections, but now I'm blanking on it. It'll probably come back to me in a moment.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that question, Daniel. Um,
Oh, I remembered it. Okay.
yeah,
What
go for
I
it.
was gonna say, I think Daniel, because you had asked about like a public holiday or something like that. I do think that we should be able to make election day something where everybody is able to have the flexibility to get off of work and go vote. Absolutely. But I also think that we need to expand access to the ballot as much as possible. There should be no hindrances for people to exercise their right to go vote. And right now, what we're seeing is that is actively being stripped away, that is actively being rolled back. And many people oftentimes are struggling to exercise their right to vote who are coming from underrepresented communities. And so I think that that is also something that is a major priority for anybody who seeks office is how are you going to expand access to the ballot?
Yeah, definitely. That's a great addition. Um, okay. So again, just a reminder, feel free to send questions in the chat, or raise your hand. Okay, so we have one from the chat here. So which candidates are getting money from APAC or
Yes.
shell APAC organizations? And then the second part, can you give any information on this and how it affects the race?
Yeah, absolutely. So Melissa Conyers-Ervin is receiving close to $3 million from APAC Super PAC, United Democracy Project. This is one of the shell PACs that, again, are coming in under a different name, trying not to garner too much attention. But of course, I feel it's my responsibility to make sure that I am speaking out against this in any public forum that I have the opportunity to, so that voters are informed. Again, $3 million every week. There is about 500,000 that is funneled into ads that support Melissa Conyers-Ervin. So you might see an ad come across your TV for Melissa, and at the bottom it will say at the end like paid for by United Democracy Project. That is what that money is going towards. And again, it's to increase her recognition in the district. It's to give the appearance that she is everywhere, right? And to really make sure that people vote for her. They're not being transparent at all about who United Democracy Project is, right? And what we know about APAC and its shell packs is that they have their own priorities. They have their own objectives of what they are focused on passing legislation on, what is going to protect their interests of war, endless wars, and militarism abroad, and making sure that what continues to unfold in Gaza, the genocide that continues to unfold in Gaza, again, continues at the hands of our elected officials and with our taxpayer dollars. So it's why I feel the utmost responsibility to call this out. Jason Friedman is receiving a lot of APAC aligned and APAC adjacent funding. That means that while United Democracy Project, as the super PAC, is not formally going in and funding Jason's campaign, there are many big donors who fund APAC and fund dark money interest groups that are also funding Jason's campaign. So again, those are the things that some people might try to go under the radar to say, oh, I'm not getting APAC money. But even if you, I'm sure folks saw the Intercept article that kind of exposed how much money Jason is getting from APAC aligned donors and where those interests really lie.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you highlighting the distinction too between the actual PACs and then the actual donors. I know the APAC and its donors have gotten quite crafty this cycle.
Yes.
And they've done it in previous cycles too. But
Yep.
I guess I have a follow-up to that. Like, so why? I mean, Anna, I don't know. Maybe Melissa Conyers-Ervin has just given plenty of statements that might make it obvious why APAC would spend money to support her. But uh, do you would you mind giving your opinion as to why you think Melissa? Like what? I mean, she's the city treasurer. I mean, from the forums I've gone to and things I've heard, I've never really heard her say much that made me think, okay, like I can kind of see it, other than um, I surmise maybe a little more moderate. But yeah, if you have an opinion on
To be
sort of what that
honest,
strategy is there, that'd be great.
I'm going to be very clear. I have, from the outset, been extremely outspoken that I will never take a cent from APAC or any dark money interest group ever. Not now, not ever. And I think that because of that, I don't know how those conversations unfold. Like, I
Yeah,
truly don't know. I don't know if
right.
that meant that Melissa met with them or didn't meet with them. I don't know. I don't know how they approached her and started to fund her over another candidate. What I do know is that if you do not stand 10 toes down and reject that money, then they will sneak their way in and try to influence your seat because they think that they will be able to, again, pull the strings over the decisions that you make in Congress. And I've made it very clear I am not there to represent them if I am elected, which is why I've given no room and zero opportunity for them to approach me.
Yeah, no, I get that. It would be hard to sort of know for sure, and there's not too much value in speculating. So I get that. Okay, so we have more questions on the topic. So I don't want to just move away from those audience questions.
Yeah.
So sort of follow-ups. What are some of the organizations? Like what are some of the like the super PACs or the super APAC super PACs, or there are other sort of front organizations that are giving money other than United Democracy Project, just so we could be.
Yeah, sorry. You cut out a little bit, but I think I got the question, and maybe it's my internet. So let me know if I'm the one cutting out. But folks might have seen in Illinois
Oh,
9. Am I cutting out?
Annabelle, you're good. It was Eric.
Oh, okay.
no, you are not. I did just get a message. Yeah, yeah, I was gonna say,
Okay.
I just got a message that said my connection was unstable, so that's
No,
not
you're all good.
good, but
I got the bulk
we'll
of
roll
your
with it.
question.
Sorry,
I
Annabelle,
think
go ahead.
no worries.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
I think I heard your question, Eric. I'll say that folks, if you're following the Illinois
Hmm.
9 race pretty closely, you might have seen another PAC get involved called Elect Chicago Women or something like that, if I'm not mistaking the name of it. But again, this is a shell pack. This is a shell pack that is trying to come in on this like ambiguous name, like who would be against electing Chicago women to office, right? But it is not
Mm.
supposed to be transparent. They're not going to name their pack like Fund War Pack, right? Like they're not going to come out there and tell you exactly what they're doing. But that's why it matters so much to dig into where people are getting their money and most importantly to ask these kinds of questions of the people seeking to represent you, which is why I'm so glad to be able to share this time with you all tonight and why I've made it my priority throughout this entire campaign to go to every possible forum that I can, because that is what voters deserve. You deserve elected representatives, people who are trying to represent you and your interests, to face these questions and to actually give you answers that are acceptable, not, answers that are like, oh, I didn't know who they were. That's not acceptable. You have to be able to understand who is funding your campaign.
I agree. That seems like that seems like something you should be able to do if you're going to run for Congress. Um, okay, so let's see. I don't see any other chat questions. So if anybody has a question they'd like to ask, you can feel free to raise your hand. You don't have to ask a chat question. Otherwise, go ahead and chat up to Katie, the co-host, and she'll send it on to me. Otherwise, I'm going to move to one of the questions that I have, and I'm going to move to a shorter question, hopefully
Sure.
one that doesn't involve so much build up for me. So you've mentioned having significant student loans yourself. How does the personal anxiety of seeing that monthly balance affect how you would fight for debt cancellation compared to older colleagues who maybe school was a little cheaper if they went to
Yeah.
it and when they went to it? Um, yeah, I guess if you wouldn't mind answering that.
Of course, yeah. So one thing I'll say is that it's unfortunate that so many people are facing student loan debt. And again, student loans can take years to pay off, if not decades. Well into your adult life, you could be spending time paying off your student loan debt instead of actually building your own wealth. Um, for me, I think the biggest shock was, during COVID, there was the pause on student loans, and that was such a relief to not have to pay my student loans at that time, or to at least be able to defer them. And I think now what I've noticed, I actually just logged into my portal a couple of days ago, and what frightens me the most is how high the interest rate is on my student loans. And I have like four different types of loans that I'm actively paying off. Um, and each are now set on like monthly payment schedules, so that I don't forget. But the interest rate is extremely high. I mean, one of my loans was at like 6.5% or something like that, in terms of interest rate. And again, this is all contributing to the affordability crisis that we're seeing across this country, especially of young people, those who have, earned their degree, put in the work to get that degree, and yet again, you're graduating not with opportunity, but with debt. You're graduating having to pay off that debt to try to get a job, and that job might not even pay you a living wage. And so again, I think this is this constant cycle of survival that so many young people, especially, are being caught up into. And it's why I strongly support, tuition-free public colleges. I strongly support freezing in the interim here, freezing the interest from rising on our student loans. But ultimately, I want to get to a place where we're able to wipe out those student loans, where incurring this kind of student loan is not something that students are ever put in a position to have to take on. It is a huge burden.
Yeah, definitely. I could relate. I myself have student loans, and yeah, when you said you logged into the portal, I actually thought, oh boy, I haven't done that in a while.
You know,
I should look at those. They're on auto payment. But yeah, anyways, okay, so um that actually I have a follow-up question that I just want to ask. So maybe just kind of quick because we do have some other audience questions. But so
okay.
you mentioned freezing the interest rates on student loans like that. I think, right, that's one of those policies that there's a lot of the Democratic Party that is really resistant for some reason to ideas like that. They sort of they sort of accept the default that, these interest rates, even, even when the government is the one, financing it, right? That it's somehow it's market based and you can't mess with that. And there's no entity that could mess with these interest rates. But then, like Donald Trump just, I mean, he's not going to do it, but off the cuff, he'll say things like, well, why don't we just like not do credit card interest? And then, people are like, there's no discussion about it, and he's probably not going to do it. But like, even he, fascist, evil Donald Trump is not afraid to at least say the idea out loud. Do you see value in more simple, straightforward policies that
Yeah.
people understand, as opposed to like a really twisted, like targeted, precise, incremental policy that affects, X portion of the population if you make Y dollars in some, tax bracket Z, et cetera, et cetera. Do you see
Yeah.
value in simple ideas like that as opposed to ones that might sound more intellectual?
Look, I'm going to say I see value in ideas that are laser focused on actually improving people's lives. That's what I see value in. And despite the lies that have spewed out of Donald Trump's mouth, one of the things that he kept on saying was he's going to lower your grocery costs. He's going to make milk more affordable, eggs more affordable, right? All these things that obviously he's done the opposite of, especially with his tariffs. We have all seen that actually hurts people, working communities the most, and raises prices for them. But I think what matters is we need to be able to elect the right leaders who are going to figure out the solutions to the problems that everyday people are facing. And again, that means that you may, we have to be the ones to do the hard work to figure out how we're going to get that done, not whether or not we go and get that thing done. And I think for far too long, we have had even those within the Democratic Party raise their hands up and say, well, there's nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do. And
Yeah.
yet, I have actively seen the Republican side of the party, or I've seen the Republican Party dust off things from like the 1800s and say, we're going to use this, like no one's ever heard of this procedure, and we're going to use it. And then somehow they use it to bulldoze through their priorities. There's always a way. And we need to have the right leaders who are going to be focused on getting it done for the people in their district, for the constituents they are there to represent.
Awesome. I love that answer. But okay. So now I should get back to audience questions because it's not just my personal questions. Okay, so one question, a real simple one. How can people support your campaign as volunteers?
So you can go to annabelleforcongress.com, or you can follow me on social media, at Annabelle for Congress, and we are posting all the different types of opportunities for you to get involved. On my website, there's the volunteer tab where you can fill that out, and we will get you locked in and ready to go for canvassing, for phone banking. We have a couple really exciting events coming up, including an amazing storytelling event that is going to be happening on Sunday, March 8th. And we're partnering with a Chicago-based musician and artist, who is also the founder of Lost and Found Storytelling for that event. And it's all going to be about how do we build, as the 7th District, the future that we want? How do we build a unified district? And it's going to be a really great opportunity to meet some of your neighbors that maybe you've never met before, but also connect over, building the shared future together. So definitely go check out the website and fill out that volunteer form. It's going to be the quickest way to get involved.
Awesome. Yeah, yeah. We, I mean, and just for folks, if you're in Indivisible downtown Chicago, I mean, I've sent out an email about it before, right? I'm happy to put people in touch with campaigns, particularly Annabelle's, right? We have exchanged emails, the campaign and I. Otherwise, yeah, we have those same links on our little website too. So yep. Feel free to reach out to us. We can help too.
Thank you.
So do. All right, then the next audience question. What is one thing you've learned about Illinois 7 that you didn't know before the campaign?
Oh, that's a great question. Um, I don't think I realized how absolutely wonky the map is, like truly. Because you like if you look at the map, you have parts of certain neighborhoods and you're zigzagging all over the place. So again, when I go and door knock, for instance, in Humble Park, I have to be very mindful which street I don't cross into because then we're going into a different district completely despite being in the same neighborhood. And so that's something that, has been a big learning for me. It's definitely, helped me kind of get a better sense of all of the different turns and twists of this district, but that's not unique to the 7th. I think that is kind of a commonality in a lot of the ways these districts are drawn, and you see it kind of cut through different neighborhoods. But I think, one thing I'll say, about the 7th district is that there's a lot, I think, that my vision for this district has always been one where we can unite the very diverse and unique neighborhoods that are part of it. Growing up, excuse me, growing up in Chicago, on the Southwest side, I think rarely do people leave their neighborhoods. And one of the things I want to try to build are those stronger ties between our communities because our future is one that is shared, and we have to be able to understand the complexities that differ neighborhood to neighborhood, from Englewood to Chinatown to the Loop, and then all the way west, right? There's so many different experiences, and we need to be able to tie all of those together.
Yeah, for sure. I guess a quick follow-up on that. What do you think about increasing the cap on the number of representatives in the U.S. House?
Mm. I think more representation is great. Sorry, I'm coughing. I'm getting over a little bit of a cold. I think more representation is great. And, I'd be curious to learn more about what that could look like. But certainly, I think we need to be able to build the type of leverage in Congress that is going to push the legislation across, not just introduce legislation, right? We have to actually be able to pass it and then enact it, actually see it implementized into our communities. And so I think that getting more elected officials who are going to be able to work in lockstep with one another to get those priorities across is absolutely something that is necessary at this time. Again, as I've said before, we can't afford lukewarm politicians. We can't afford folks who are going to play it safe when we're up against so many different threats against our lives.
Nice. Okay. Um, let's see. Do we have, let's see, other audience questions? Okay. Um, so, um, so on your campaign website, you cite the horrifying statistic that I had not heard until this year, which maybe I should have, but in Chicago alone, the median household wealth for a
Yes.
Black family is $0
Yep.
compared to $210,000 as for the median wealth for a white household.
Yep.
So can you talk about that issue, some of the
Yeah.
factors that you think drove that issue, and what you would propose we do
Yeah.
to fix that?
Well, look, it's what has driven my position on reparations. It's what has driven my platform on being able to push for how we slam the door shut on the growing economic opportunity and wealth gap in our country, racial wealth gap in our country. It's Chicago, and specifically the 7th district, is a microcosm of that racial wealth gap that we are seeing nationwide. And again, it is past time that we had leaders invested in reparations. This is about economic justice. This is, of course, about racial justice as well. But again, we cannot continue down this path where that wealth gap continues to widen. And it's families, everyday families, who are paying the price of that. It's why I feel so invested in reparations and in making sure that something like reparations that has been studied and talked about for so long, it needs to be legislated. It needs to be something that is enacted. And that is why that has been a leading part of my platform is tackling that gap. Yep.
Nice. Yeah, that's what part of the question I had for the question I just asked you, part of it was actually I sort of worked it into a different question, was about simplicity, and that I know, direct cash payments is the like a simple idea to fix that problem, but in my opinion, is you often get into this weird conversation where people are like, well, no, like we can't do that for some reason because that's like
Right.
really simple. Clearly, that can't be the answer. So we need a policy that's like way more complicated and nobody can
Mhm.
understand it. And so I guess the question I'll get to here is, so um for policy and for legislation like that, I mean, do you see sort of utilizing your organizing skills as really a key way to help get something like that, at least, to a vote in the House, maybe across the lines, something like, getting, I guess, getting actual people support, from actual voters, from actual people, and sort of getting that message up to folks in the House that there's actual grassroots popular support behind issues like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think that that is where my organizing skills come into play to be able to build the broad-based coalition that we need at the congressional level to actually make something like direct cash payments and reparations a reality for everyday families. Not saying it would be easy by any means, it would not be easy. And I'll say this, the very first day that I was canvassing, when someone saw that on my material, they were like, yeah, that'll never happen. There is going to be folks who are constricted about how things have operated. And again, it goes back to what I said before that separates me from any other candidate in this field. It is the fact that I am coming from a generation that is not being bogged down by how politics has worked. We are more motivated by how politics should work. And that is how we're showing up. That is the kind of energy and conviction that we are leading with. That is the kind of bold and strategic big swings that we are excited to be able to take at the federal level. Again, because these things, when we are talking about access to housing, when we are talking about the ability to afford to put food on the table to feed you and your kids, these are not things that should be optional. These are bare bone necessities for people to be able to live and survive. That is as black and white as it gets. And so this is something that I would be so focused on always tying it back to the lived realities of those in this district. Not to mention that reparations is a net benefit for all of us. It is a net benefit for all of us. Something like direct cash payments would bring in $60 billion worth of investment into the city of Chicago. That looks like people starting their own small businesses. And that looks like more jobs that are available locally that pay people a livable wage. This is something that spurs economic development and economic opportunity in a district that has faced generations of disinvestment.
I like that answer a lot. Thank you. So kind of a question that is similar to part of or related to part of your answer there. Question from the audience. So does Mamdani's win in New York City and Catherine Barrett Wilson's win in Seattle give you hope for the future of the Democratic Party in terms of the viability of electing young socialists and the functional effect they can have in government?
Look, I followed Mayor Mamdani's race very, very closely. I'm very proud to have people on my team who came to us from Mamdani's race and have helped out with our social media, have helped out with a lot of our strategy, which is super, super exciting. I think we saw a title shift because of the way that Zohran Mamdani led. Every single opportunity he got, he made it about his constituents. And that is the type of leadership that we need in this moment. Someone who is genuine, someone who's authentic, but also someone who is going to take the kind of steps that are needed to actually deliver and meaningfully improve people's lives. And I'm very excited for the shift to come to Chicago, hopefully, if we're willing to take it.
Awesome. Okay. So let's see. So we have about 15 minutes left, or at least that's what we budgeted for. If there's, if Annabelle's okay with it, and I bet it
Yeah, of course.
sounds like she's, she's doing her best to work through this. So we really appreciate that. Um,
Sorry, I'm
uh,
coughing, y'all.
yeah, no worries, no worries. That is rough. I would,
You know,
and I
like
would, yeah. Go ahead.
this whole campaign, I have not been sick, and then suddenly I got a cold. So and it was
Yeah,
bound to hit me.
exactly. Um, okay, so I guess why don't we ask, we've been trying to finish on like a few fun questions.
Okay.
So let me see here. Where did our fun, so I guess one of the fun questions we have is like what is a podcast or a book or a genre of music that you've been really into and maybe has helped get you through the day-to-day grind of the campaign?
Look, Bad Bunny has what's gotten me through the day-to-day of this campaign. My comms director and I quite frequently listen to Bad Bunny, and that is something that even with the Super Bowl performance, we did a whole Benito Bowl. Get together in back of the yards, which was a ton of fun. And it was also just a moment of a lot of pride as well as a Latina, as someone who's half Puerto Rican, being able to see that, that was just really, filled my cup up. And certainly his music always gets me in a better mood. I don't really know how you can listen to him and not feel happier.
For sure. Yeah. No, the whole Super Bowl thing blows my mind because like I mean that was an awesome Super Bowl halftime performance.
Yeah.
It's like it's like you don't need to it could only be better if you understand Spanish fluently, but you don't need to because the
You don't
music
need to.
itself is just awesome.
And he
But
made so many different political statements in that show, which was awesome. That he brought attention to all of these different issues, especially like when it comes to the electricity grid in Puerto Rico and the fact that, post hurricanes, that has been something that the island continues to deal with to date.
for sure, yeah. Yeah, he used the opportunity well.
Yeah.
Um so one of the other fun questions we have for you. So what is a cafe or maybe a restaurant or a bar or some other location in the district that
Yeah.
you particularly like?
Kusanya Cafe in Englewood. And if you have not been, you absolutely should go. It is, first of all, it's more than a cafe. It is actually a nonprofit, and they
Hmm.
have different events for the community there at the shop. But I will also say their prices are amazing. Like, I was shocked. I got a breakfast sandwich and their large coffee there, and I don't think it was more than $6 for both of that. And like, truly, it was amazing. And just a beautiful, beautiful cafe. They have books inside. They have this amazing portrait of Malcolm X that was actually painted by the cafe owner. It's him and his wife who help run the cafe. So it's a great, great place. We've had a couple listening sessions there throughout this campaign, and highly, highly recommend it. If you've not been, you should absolutely go to that cafe and
On that,
show them some love.
awesome. Yeah, that's what we've had two people ask now for the name, apparently. So if you wouldn't mind repeating it.
Yes, Kusanya Cafe. It's spelled Kusanya.
Sanya.
And it's
Nice.
right on a corner there. So you won't miss it if you go. You won't miss it.
Awesome. Okay, that was just that reaching the whole chat.
Yeah.
Um, okay. Well, let's see. I mean, let's see. I could ask another question. Let's see. Do we have any other audience questions? Um, let's do this. Last chance to submit an audience question in the next maybe minute or two. Um, and let me go back to my document. Let's see. Was there anything else that I really wanted to ask? Oh, well, here we go. So here's an audience question, and it fits the lighter side, so that's good. We're not going to dive
Oh,
back into, heavy policy or anything like that. So do you consider yourself an underdog in this race?
yes, I do. I do consider myself an underdog in this race. I think, I think people have been a little surprised to see the kind of campaign that I'm running. And that's really exciting for me to see. And what I've said is that I am running a campaign that is values driven, values led. And I'm really excited by the team that I've been able to build, by the traction that is forming on the ground, the momentum and the excitement that is building. And I definitely believe that we are an underdog campaign.
Yeah, for sure. I've liked the campaign you have run as well, that's for sure.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, no problem. I feel like that's a weird statement. I'm not a professional at this, people. Keep that in mind. All right. Okay. So another question. Who are you looking forward to working with in Congress? I could see you being so this is the audience member speaking. I could see you being a great member of the squad.
That is a real honor to hear that. Thank you so much. What a compliment. I would be most excited to work alongside Representative Rashida Tlaib. She is someone who, if you haven't seen in 2024, I was so pumped to do this. I did a Twitch stream with Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib and Hassan Piker, and that was in 2024. It was a lot about it was focusing on immigration, but it was also partly to drive out young people to go out and vote. And one of the things that she has just been an outspoken champion for immigrant rights and for all rights. And I remember when I was in DC for one of, we were putting together a civil disobedience, and we had a press conference as well with some of our immigrant youth members. And Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib ran out like minutes after she wrapped up a meeting because she had heard that this was happening outside of the house, and she wanted to make sure she was there. And she ran out of as her meeting wrapped up, and she made sure that she spoke at our event and she uplifted the voices of our members. She just constantly goes above and beyond. And so she's someone who I would be thrilled to work with.
Awesome. Um, okay. Let's see. Other questions? Any last minute questions for those of us left in the session? We'll give it one more minute. We've done our fun questions. I think, I mean, at least I guess we definitely want to leave you with a little bit of time, just it's like closing remarks. So don't
Oh,
worry.
sure.
Yeah, yeah. But um, I don't want to do, closing remarks and then have like two questions come in or something. So I'm going to give it just like 5 more seconds. I'm
Oh,
going to
good.
stall here,
No rush.
and
Take your time.
I'll announce for the recording that this was being recorded, and we're going to make the recording available. It gets sent out to our entire Indivisible Downtown email list, and then it gets sent out to anybody that's signed up on the public Mobilize event page.
Great.
So alrighty. So then with that, we'll consider the audience questions section closed. No more questions from me. And I guess if you just have anything you want to add for us, Annabelle, to take us out, and anything else you maybe didn't get a chance to talk about or that you want us to know, we'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. First off, let me say that questions are never done, so y'all can always reach out to me at any time. Know that not only am I reading the questions, my entire team is looking at the questions, and we want to make it a priority, especially with 15 days left. I know that probably questions are coming up now more than ever. So please ask as many questions and know that we will do our best to respond to you ASAP. Um, what I'll kind of close out on is a little bit of what I started on, which is that this moment demands true progressive leadership. And I believe that we're at a time where even what it means to be progressive is something that we've seen folks like Zohran Mamdani embody, right? And there's a tidal shift that is happening and a reckoning that is happening within our Democratic Party. We know that the Democratic Party needs to change dramatically, especially when we see even those who are part of our Democratic leadership delay a vote on the War Powers Resolution leading to the attacks in Iran. We've seen them quite actively get in the way of progress. We need people who are going to stand 10 toes down on their own 2 feet with a spine and are not going to capitulate, are not going to cede ground to what we are seeing as rising fascism around us. This is not the time to elect people who are going to be lukewarm. We need leaders who are not going to mince their words. And throughout this entire campaign, I hope that I've shown you all who I am and how I would show up for you in Congress. Because you deserve absolutely nothing less than someone who goes above and beyond to make sure that they are trying to improve your life. And I will say this from lived experience that I know the consequences of when our leaders fail us. The consequences are families that are ripped apart, are people who are detained indefinitely, are families like the one I grew up in who might not have enough money to put food on the table for all of us. Those are the consequences. And those are not consequences that I am willing to lay down and simply accept. I'm here to fight. I'm here to do everything possible to do my part in making our world something that you all are proud to have a leader like me in Congress representing you. Because I know what it's like to look and be like disappointed that that person is representing us. But you all deserve to be proud and to say, hell yeah, that is my Congresswoman. That's the kind of leader I will be for you. And I will always do the work to earn your support. I will never take it for granted. And I will never assume that if I was elected, I will always have your support because that is not the way things work. I have to show up every day and earn it. And you all are the ones who have the power. You get to say, well, you didn't earn it this time. You're out. And guess what? That is your prerogative. But it's my job to actually show you who I am through my actions. And that's exactly what I intend to do.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that was an excellent closing statement. I know I appreciated this session tonight. As just a personal compliment, as I said, I think you injected a lot of fire and energy into this race, and I personally appreciate that a lot.
Thanks.
So yeah. Alrighty. I think with that, we'll wrap it up, and I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording. And thank you so much to everybody for attending tonight. And yeah, we'll make the recording available. And Annabelle, thank you so much. And take care, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for your time. Bye. Take care.
Bye now.